Talk about some test results. I actually see a scary amount of SIBO misdiagnosis. So if you got SIBO, you do need to get rid of it. So it's either antimicrobials or the animal diet or the antibiotics. But if you don't have SIBO but have some of the symptoms of SIBO, it could be LIBO, and then the treatment's very different. So you want to go into rebuilding versus killing. So I see a lot of overkilling, which ends up leaving the microbiome quite barren. And we need those guys to digest our food. So if we don't have enough of the good guys, we can still get indigestion, we can still get bloating, we can still get pain. So it's really good to know if you have SIBO or if it's maybe LIBO. So let's go through some. Okay, so I always start by looking in the methane column, and then I look at the hydrogen. The reason for that, so methane is CH4, so it takes 4 hydrogen molecules and 1 carbon molecule to make methane, and then hydrogen is two molecules. So the methanogens can also eat the hydrogen gas. So if you have high amounts of the methanogens, which produce the methane, then they could be gobbling up some of the hydrogen gas, which gives you a false reading on the hydrogen numbers. Sometimes what can happen, I don't see it too often, but it can happen. So if you had really high numbers of methane and then you manage to bring them down, it can look like the hydrogen numbers increase, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the hydrogen SIBO bacteria have increased. It's just that the methanogens aren't there to eat it. So the methane one is that kind of the dominating gas, so I check that one out first. So the first thing that you look at is the baseline. So this is before you've drunk the lactulose or the glucose. A baseline of 5 and above is considered high. And so then you might either think of LIBO, large intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or improper testing. So if you didn't do the prep diet, which is the chicken, whitefish, eggs, coconut oil, olive oil, maybe rice if you've been having it. So if you know that you did the prep diet spot on, then if it's above 5, then you think about LIBO. Whereas if you had some fruits and veggies, then it could be that. So I'd recommend retesting. Okay, so this one, and then with methane, we look for a rise of 12 parts per million over the lowest preceding value. So this is what the ppm is, parts per million. So the lowest preceding value is 11. So anything 23 and above would be considered positive for methane. So this person is positive at the 60-minute mark and stays positive. So I would say that is a tick for positive for methane SIBO. And then for hydrogen, we look for a rise of 20 parts per million over the lowest preceding value. So lowest value is 0, so therefore anything 20 and above would be positive, which it is also at the 60-minute mark. So this would be like a classic positive SIBO test result. And there's also the double peak that they talk about there as well. That double peak is usually kind of when it's transitioning through the ileocecal valve, so going into the large intestine, where we should see some fermentation. Yes. Okay, so what's another one? Methane starts at 10, so that would be the high baseline as well, rises to 24 within 20 minutes. So anything 22 and above. So it's kind of mild. So it's not a huge case of SIBO. It goes up to 28, goes up to 31. So I would still consider that positive for methane SIBO. And then the hydrogen is not. So it doesn't go anywhere near rising over 20. And then that was for lactulose. This is for the glucose. And then they say that glucose gets absorbed. Well, it does. Glucose gets absorbed higher up in the small intestine. So it's nice to test with 2. I personally go with the lactulose first and then sometimes follow up with a glucose. So yeah, positive again. Okay, let's go with this one. So baseline is 0, so that's great. So I wouldn't think LIBO in this case. You can have SIBO and LIBO at the same time. Yay. Okay, the lowest value is 0, so we're looking for a rise of 12 parts per million. That doesn't happen, so I would say that's negative. For the hydrogen, we're looking for a rise of 20 parts per million over the lowest value, so 22 and above, which it is. It's towards the end of the small intestine. So someone like this, I would definitely, well, I always do anyway. So I'm looking at the person that has this test result and I'm asking about different symptoms and what's their transit time like, and you can kind of get a sense of what's going on from there. So usually the transition time is between like 100 to 120 minutes. So it's kind of in that bit there. So I would pair that up with the person and see what's going on. Just off the test result, I'd say this person might need like a little bit of antimicrobials, but nothing too intense because it's not that bad. Okay. Whoa, so look at this baseline. So this baseline is 37. So that's super high. So this person's probably going to be very uncomfortable all the time. It's bloated when they wake up, bloated when they eat anything, because things just kind of stack on top of each other because there's always fermentation. Unless they didn't do the test prep as they should have. Okay, so rise of 12 parts per million, so 49 and above, just on the transition points. I'm like, oh, I'm not so sure. And then 20 parts per million, so 24 and above. So again, it's in that little transit time through going to the large intestine. So this person, I would probably do a bit of large intestine dysbiosis work first, and this high baseline. So because it's like, there might be like a teeny tiny little bit of SIBO, but it looks more like LIBO. So things like partially hydrolyzed guar gum and protectus, which is the lactobacilli reuteri, those are two things that you can use with SIBO or not, and it helps to reduce methane levels. So I would absolutely start there, because maybe this person just has a whole bunch of fermentation happening because they don't have enough of the good guys in the large intestine. And wouldn't it be amazing if they didn't need to do a whole full-on round of antimicrobials? So it's so good to know how to read test results. Another one. So 35, super high baseline, and goes looking for 47 and above at the 80-minute mark. So yeah, I'd say that is SIBO. And this is a good thing to point out. So it's over the lowest preceding value. So not the starting value, lowest preceding value. It's usually the starting value, but not always. So 7, so anything 27 and above, just positive at the 60-minute mark, definitely positive at the 80-minute mark. So I would consider that positive for both. And these are just some side-by-sides. So what have we got here? I'm kind of in the way. I'll just make myself smaller. This one's a little bit blurry. Sorry about that. So methane was 7, and it did go up to 37 at the 100-minute mark, but positive from the 60-minute mark, and then negative and negative. I remember who this was. She was so lovely. So yeah, that was in when did we do that? Between August and November. So I think we started in September, October, November. 3 months, yeah. I love SIBO stuff. I get so excited about it. Look at this. So methane was 17 baseline, down to 0. Boom, boom. And then hydrogen was positive and then not. So this, you see some fermentation there, which is what we do want, actually. So this is where it's going into the large intestine, and it shows that there is some fermentation, which is great news. So, yeah. So those are just some examples of how to interpret test results. So maybe you can use some of the information against your own and just double check that you're on the right track. Yeah. If you need any help with treatment, I've got a bunch of different options. There's like the online course, which is totally do-it-yourself, and I'm super happy with it. And that's like the do-it-yourself version of my group coaching programs. So it's a lot more affordable. You just need to be your own cheerleader. And then if you want some more support, I love my group coaching programs. I run them about 4 times a year. And then I've almost always got a wait list for private coaching, but you're welcome to join that. So put this down below. Cool. So if you haven't done a SIBO test, I would totally recommend it, because then you know what you're dealing with. And then what if it's not even SIBO? What if you don't even need to go through the antimicrobials? Wouldn't that be amazing? Yeah, I believe in you, superstar. You're worth it. Okay, so I'm going to do it this way so I can go on the computer and I can show you stuff. Let's just make me a little bit smaller. Okay, so here's the first one. So, a couple things that I look at. So I start by looking at the methane. That's because the methanogens can gobble up hydrogen gas if they're there. So if there's both, then the methanogens tend to dominate and give false readings on the hydrogen. What we look for methane is a rise of 12 parts per million, and that's what the ppm stands for, and over the lowest preceding value in the first 120 minutes. After that, it tends to go into the large intestine. And then for hydrogen, we look for a rise of 20 parts per million over the lowest preceding value in the first 120 minutes. That's the North American consensus. So this test result's a good one to kind of start with because I kind of disagree. Okay, so lowest preceding value, quite commonly it's the first number, but not always. So here it is. So CH4 is methane, H2 is hydrogen. So lowest preceding value is 2. So we're looking for a rise of 12 parts per million. So therefore, 14 and above would be considered positive for methane, which it is at the 150-minute mark. So I would say that's in the large intestine where we do want some fermentation. So 120 minutes, depending on the person's transit time, is when it passes through the ileocecal valve and goes into the large intestine. Then for hydrogen, we're looking for a rise of 20 parts per million over the lowest value. So anything 23 and above. Again, at the, yes, I'd say it is technically at the 120-minute mark though. So this is where it is transitioning into the large intestine. So it's always very important to talk to the person that this test result belongs to. So figuring out what's going on with transit time, which just remember can be tricky because you can still have diarrhea and have slow small intestine transit time. So it's very important to know what you're doing there. I'm not going to give any recommendations on doing this because it's a lot more involved, but that's what I think about this test result. So I wouldn't say that this is positive for SIBO. I'd be looking at the other parts of the digestive system. Great ones to discuss. So this one, if you look here, it's like, oh my God, 56, that's so high. But it's at the 120-minute mark again. So methane, so it's just above 5. So I consider that a high baseline. So probably some fermentation happening most of the time, most likely LIBO, because she just messaged me and said that she did the prep diet to a T. So not for methane, possibly some LIBO, and then lowest preceding value 13, so 23 and above is at the 100-minute mark. So then again, it's like similar to the last one, depending on the transit time. But yeah, I wouldn't, I can't make recommendations because I haven't done the whole case history. But again, I would be hesitant to say that this is for sure SIBO. It's just on that point there. So it could be at the very, very end of the small intestine, but depending on the transit time. This one, okay, baseline is 8. So again, just over, consider possible LIBO. Looking for 20 and above, not. So this is only testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What's missing? So usually we test every 20 minutes. So it's like you usually have 10 samples. So they kind of change the timing of, which I don't love. And they only went up to 120 minutes. So it's nice to know what happens after that if it's the fermentation in the large intestine. So I know. And then, see, this is where the lowest value is actually the second test. So 23 and above, yes, at the 90-minute mark, still positive at the 120-minute mark. So this one, it would be nice to know what's happening over there, but I would say, yep, that's positive for hydrogen SIBO. So funny. She sent me this saying, couldn't resist sending mine in to show off. Jen has just completed my SIBO Freedom group coaching program. And she doesn't have SIBO anymore. So that's really cool. So fun. Okay, so started with, so methane was 7, and then we're looking for a rise of 12 parts per million. So anything where's my brain? 19 and above would be considered positive. So positive at the 60-minute mark, and then just dips under again, and then positive again at the 37 mark, 47 at the 120-minute mark. Oh, thank God if you know. Okay, so hydrogen, and we're looking for 30 and above. So again, at the 60-minute mark, and then stays high. Highest numbers were, that could be transitioning into the large intestine now, so 175. So if you didn't know that, you could see 175, be like, whoa. Okay, so now there's a little bit of I've sent her off with some guidelines for the coming months, so just bringing down the baseline a little bit more. So 8, so anything 20 and above, no. It only goes up to 11. There's only a rise of 3. That's not positive. And then 10, so those 10, so anything 20, 30 and above would be considered positive. It doesn't go above 12. Negative for SIBO. So lovely. I love all my people. So there we have a positive result and then a negative result. Boom. Okay, so what have we got here? Let's do some more. So methane, CH4, we're looking for a rise of 12 parts per million. So over the lowest value, is 1. So we're looking for 13 and above. Doesn't hit it. Negative for methane SIBO. Hydrogen, we're looking for a rise of 20 parts per million over the lowest value, so 22 and above. Yes, at the 75-minute mark, and it stays higher up there. So I would say that is positive for hydrogen SIBO. Because at the 75-minute mark, you can be pretty certain that it's still in the small intestine. It's at 120-minute mark where it starts to transition. So yeah, negative methane, positive. What's going on over here? These baseline numbers are very high. It's probably one of the highest I've seen, among the highest that I've seen. So anything 5 and above for a baseline for methane is considered high, and that can show LIBO, large intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or dysbiosis. So that's super high. So I'd say a lot of these symptoms, or just feeling full and awful all the time, comes from this. So then there is the rise of 12 parts per million, then it drops back down more, and then goes up again. So I would say, yes, it's positive for methane SIBO, but the difference is not so much. So the big thing from there is the high baseline. So definitely working on that one. And then for the hydrogen, looking for the rise of 20, so 42 and above, yes. Just got cut off. So, maybe smaller. So what would this be? So that's 120, 100-minute mark. So 22. So almost just, I'm guessing that'd be the 80-minute mark. So yeah, but remember that's like the 120-minute mark is the transition time. So yeah, it could be just positive for SIBO. This is when I would definitely, I always like to talk to the person that's showing me the test result, but I would be doing more investigations before deciding to nuke things. Because this person might feel a whole bunch better by working on the large intestine and putting some good stuff in the large intestine and reducing this fermentation. Because it looks like there's a lot of fermentation happening all the time, always. Because if we do the test prep properly, you reduce the fermentable carbohydrates, the fermentable foods. So there really shouldn't be much gas before you take your solution, which is this baseline here. So there's a lot of gas happening already. So, yeah, pretty high. Sorry, love. That must be very uncomfortable. One more. So, what do we got going on here? So, that's pretty high too. So, methane, it is above 5, so it starts at 12, so it's a high baseline, possibly LIBO. She has got another follow-up, so I'll go through those two. So this is the first one from, don't do that. May, end of May. Okay, so lowest is 10, so therefore 22 and above. Yes, they're at the 60-minute mark, and then 80, and then 100. So I would say that was positive for methane. And then we're looking for a rise of 20, so 24 and above. So yes, 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 yes. That's pretty high. Sorry, chick, that must have been really uncomfortable. Okay, so this was the follow-up one, November, so 6 months later. Look at that! What a legend! So now down to 4. That's awesome. So negative for methane SIBO. And then lowest is 1. So anything 20 and above. Which it looks like 35. But that's at the transition of the small intestine into the large intestine. So I would say that is, well, depending on the person and their transit time. But just from that test result, I would say negative for hydrogen too. Congrats, superstar. That's super cool. So if you get a result like this and you're still having symptoms, then you might just look at the rest of your digestive system. So what's happening with your stomach acid, what's happening with your large intestine, is there leaky gut, is there stealth infections? But yeah, that's a negative result. Super cool. Oh, I love it. I love testing. Testing is so useful because it helps you get really targeted with your treatment. So you might be investing in this cost of this test, but you know your answers of what to do, and then you know where you're going, and then you can get the right treatment for the right thing. Because remember me, I had hydrogen SIBO, but I was constipated, which usually goes with methane SIBO. So if I had just gone by my symptoms, I would have chosen the wrong treatment and therefore not gone anywhere. I might have got some relief, but I wouldn't have fixed my SIBO. I don't know what to do it again, and that would have been horrible because it's not fun. It's so good to feel free with food again. That's why I chose the name SIBO Freedom for my group coaching program. I actually ran a competition and a girl named Karen submitted that name. I was like, yes, that is awesome. Yeah, so freedom from fear, freedom from the food fear, freedom, all that sort of stuff. Cool. No, I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to say something else. I'll leave it. Cool. So if you haven't done a test, highly recommend it. And then you can use these to kind of go against your own one. I'll save them in the highlight bubbles, so it will be there. Nice. So we got another one. Let's look at this. So baseline methane is 3, totally fine, and it doesn't rise very much at all. Even bordering on flatline. Not really flatlined. It could be like 0.00000. The flatline sometimes indicates a hydrogen sulphide SIBO. And then the baseline hydrogen is elevated, so it could be some leftover fermentation. So just making sure that the proper prep diet was done. So no fruit and veggies, no napping during the test, no things like that. Though we look for a rise of 20 parts per million over the lowest value. And lowest value is 11, and it doesn't rise up to 31 at all. So I would say that's totally fine test result for methane and hydrogen SIBO. Though, if this person is having symptoms, then I would follow it up with some more testing. So I would like to know what's going on with the large intestine microbiome and just see kind of which part of the digestive system might be suffering a little bit. Is there inflammation in the gut, which you can do through like testing your secretory IgA, which is a stool test. Yeah, cool. So I would say negative for SIBO. Okay, so what do we think's going on over here? Let's move my face up there. What do you reckon? I say positive for SIBO, both of them, and LIBO. Oh, guys, so this lovely little chicken, starting at 25 for the height for methane, so that is a pretty high baseline. So probably some fermentation happening most of the time. Looking into LIBO, large intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Okay, so then lowest value is 16. So a rise of 12 parts per million over 16 is 28 and above. And yep, positive just at the 90-minute mark and 120-minute mark. So just positive for methane. And then hydrogen, lowest value is 10, so anything 30 and above. So I would say definitely positive for the hydrogen at the 90-minute mark and then still at the 100-minute mark. So just remembering, if the methanogens, it's tricky to tell you. So because the rise isn't that much, so might not be that many methanogens in the small intestine, but there might be lots of methane gas coming from fermentation of the large intestine. But if there are high amounts of the methanogens, because remembering that methane is CH4, so it takes 4 hydrogen molecules to make one methane molecule. So the methanogens also gobble up hydrogen gas. So sometimes if the methane levels are high and then you do treatment and you knock the methane levels down, sometimes, not always, but sometimes the hydrogen levels can look like they rise, but it's not necessarily because the bacteria have risen. It's just that you've knocked out the methanogens that have been gobbling up the hydrogen gas, so you see how much hydrogen gas is actually being produced. Sometimes, not always. So just in case you get a result that looks worse than it was, not necessarily is. Yeah, so I'd say positive for both and some LIBO thrown in. Good thing, well, this lovely lady I know is in my online course, so she's on the right track. Oh dear, go away. Don't know what I did there. Oh, I'm in the way. Another one. So methane baseline is 0 and doesn't really change at all, almost flatlining. So when we talk about the flatlining, so methane is 4 hydrogen molecules. Hydrogen is like the 2 molecules. And then I'm pretty sure hydrogen sulphide SIBO, so I need to double check that. I think it's 8 hydrogen molecules. So sometimes if you see this flat line, then it can show that there might be hydrogen sulphide SIBO. At the moment, there isn't a definitive test available to the public, but Dr. Mark Pimentel is working on one, so that will be out soon, hopefully. If that's there, so if I saw that, then I'd want to follow up and see what's happening with the large intestine microbiome. So you can use the test Thrive, THRYVE, and they do the PCR testing for the bacteria in the microbiome. So PCR is polymerase chain reaction, and it's measuring the DNA. So it's like super accurate. And then there's a couple of hydrogen sulfide ones, but the 2 main ones are your D-sulfibria and your Bilophila Wordsworthia. So if you've got higher amounts of them, then you might be having the hydrogen sulfide SIBO. Also, if you get stinky farts, like those rotten egg farts. Okay, and treatment is very different, so it's good to know what you got. Hydrogen, lowest value is 5, so 25 and above would be positive. So just positive at the 60, still positive, definitely positive at the 105 and 120. So yeah, I would say that is positive for hydrogen SIBO. Maybe even hydrogen sulfide as well. So, yeah. Okay, so these are a bit blurry, but that's okay. I can still make it out. So I've got 2 for this one. So this first one was from 2016, 21st of February 2016. And then the second one was from 2018, so almost 2 years later. So what do we got for the first one? So baseline methane is 39, so I would say that's pretty darn high. And then the biggest rise, so 35 is 13 at the 80-minute mark, goes up to 48, down to 37, back up to 48. So that's only a rise of 13 parts per million. So I don't know if I would call that methane SIBO. I would definitely call that LIBO. So there was like a lot of fermentation happening. So this baseline, so the baseline is before you even drink the lactulose solution or the glucose if you're doing the glucose solution. So you do the prep diet leading up to the test, and the prep diet is like 0 fermentable carbohydrates. It's just the chicken, the eggs, the white fish, jasmine or basmati rice if you've been eating grains. If you haven't been eating grains, just leave it out, and then you can have a little bit of olive oil or coconut oil, but not too much. So if you do this prep diet for 1 or 2 days, 1 day if regular bowel motions, 2 days if you're constipated. So when you do this prep diet, it should reduce all the fermentation in the gut because you haven't had anything to ferment. But if when you do the baseline and there is some fermentation even before you drink the lactulose is the sugar or the glucose is the sugar, so it can show that there is fermentation happening even before you do it. So that's why we talk about LIBO. So if I had this person come to me, depending on what else kind of turned out from the consultation. So when I do a consultation, it's super in-depth. So even before we start, I send out my intake form, which has got all these different things and all the different parts of the body. It's really fun to go through. And then I ask more questions about that. And this question leads on to this question, leads on to this question. It's like, oh, what did you say? You get sick 3 times a year? Oh, what did you say? You wake up 3 times in the night? Oh, really? You get dizzy when you stand up? All of these things tell me different things about what's going on in the body. So just based on this test result, of course I don't know the case history, I probably wouldn't have treated that for SIBO. I would have gone with rebuilding the gut and definitely followed up with a microbiome analysis to see what's going on in the large intestine. Wow, so those methane levels were super high. So I can't do treatment. I'm not going to do treatment. Oh, I can say that things like partially hydrolyzed guar gum or the lactobacilli reuteri, which is in the Protectus probiotic, they are really specific for reducing these methane levels. So imagine, so I know that she must have done treatment if there's a test result from 2 years later, but imagine you didn't need to treat SIBO. So this is the test result from 2 years later. So baseline is now 23, which is great. So that's reduced a lot. Then 20 is the lowest. And then we're looking for the rise of 12 parts per million, so 32 and above. So yes, just positive at the 40-minute mark, and then still positive at the 60-minute, more positive at the 80-minute mark. So then that's now positive for methane SIBO. Hydrogen SIBO is still not positive. That's fine. Just remembering though that sometimes the methanogens eat the hydrogen gas, so that can be something to consider. So it's tricky sometimes, like if we kill too much in the large intestine, or just go with the antimicrobials, because the antimicrobials are mostly specific to SIBO, but the good guys do take a hit as well. So just like if you have a garden at home or wherever you have a garden, if you imagine you're just pulling out the weeds and that's all you're doing, is like you're putting weed killer, pulling them out, weed killer, pulling them out, weed killer, pulling them out. You might not have any weeds, but it's not going to be a very healthy garden. So with your digestive system, if you're only killing, then, or if you just go a little bit too gung-ho with the killing, then you can knock out some of your good guys. And chances are, if you've got SIBO, then other parts of your digestive system probably aren't doing so well too. So, yeah, knowing what you're doing is really important. So I'm sorry that you kind of got those results. Well, I hope you're doing well. I would definitely be looking at large intestine support. It can still get better. I had someone, so when Ubiome was still going, they would measure your microbiome diversity. I had someone with a diversity score of 15%, which is super low. You want to be 80% and above. And within 2 months, 2 or 3 months, it was a while ago, got them up to 74%. Amazing. This person I'm talking about with a Ubiome 15% had so much gas that he would be in the fetal position on the floor multiple times per day, just in so much pain. So that almost completely resolved. Amazing. Oops, where am I? Here I am. Okay. counting was a bit off. I got a couple extra. There were so many. Thank you so much for sending through yours. Sorry if you missed out this time. Probably going to do a workshop on it because I'm seeing so many people not really understanding their test results. So look out for that. Okay, so what do we got? Baseline, I just cut off. Baseline methane is 2. Hide this one maybe just a little bit too much. Okay, baseline methane is 2. Looking for the rise of 12. Doesn't go. It goes up to 6 at 100 minutes. So nope, negative for a methane SIBO. Hydrogen, that's a 5, so looking for 25, so it goes to 38 at the 100-minute mark and 48 at the 120-minute mark. So again, it's that kind of transitioning time depending on what's going on with the person's transit time. And so I would call that borderline hydrogen SIBO. So definitely depending on what's going on with the person. Total transit time, there's a little bit of a home test that you can do. So you can eat a handful of corn or a handful of grated beetroot. Corn because it doesn't get digested and you'll see the little bits in your poo, and then beetroot will turn your poo purple. So when you do that, time what time you ate it, and then time how long it takes to come out the other side. Ideal total transit time from beginning to end is between 21 and 24 hours. Shorter than that and you are not absorbing all your nutrients, it's just going through too fast. Longer than that, you're probably reabsorbing some of your toxins. But that's just total transit time, so it's not telling you small intestine transit time. So yeah, to measure small intestine transit time, you have to go to a special lab, and it's quite an invasive test. So yeah, I would call that borderline. Let's see how it goes from there.